This is Hey Heart 143 with Natalie Tavidian. 143 means I love you. Together we're learning to love ourselves and stay in love no matter what life throws at us. We are constantly evolving, changing, growing emotionally, spiritually, and physically. And we have to remember to check in with our own heart as we're propelled forward. When you love your own heart, you heal better, you do better, and you live a more fulfilled life. Welcome to Hey Heart 143.
Thank you so much.
Thank you both so much for being here. This means a lot for me. Hey Heart 143 is all about self-love. The 143 means I love you, tell your own heart I love you. This all came to me when I was doing Wahe Guru's healer training, and I've been sitting a lot with self-love and self-care, and I feel like the podcast is evolving, I'm evolving, the world is evolving right now, and I had to discuss politics and issues around the world in this podcast. And I think there is definitely a connection with spirituality and politics. And I want to start with what's going on in Armenia right now. It's so crazy. I never thought that I would just be discussing this on a self-love podcast. But if I am practicing self-love, I have to educate others and I have to talk about my roots. It's been about a little over 3 weeks now. On September 27, Azerbaijan, with the backing of Turkey, launched attacks on the region of Nogorno-kharabagh, known as Artsakh to Armenians. And the Armenian diaspora all over the globe is, if you've been on social media, you've seen them all over the world. They're protesting. Armenians want attention brought to this tiny region of Artsakh. About 150,000 people live in this region. And what's really, really difficult for me is that this is personal. I grew up with stories of genocide and stories of, my grandparents actually didn't talk about it much. So I've had to do lots and lots of digging, and I have one grandmother left now, and I'm constantly asking her questions about it. And the international community is staying silent. World leaders are staying silent. And what Armenians are feeling is that trauma of the genocide, that trauma that's so deeply rooted in our DNA being reactivated. The genocide in 1915 remains unrecognized, unpunished, and what we're all feeling is history repeating itself. And we're fighting misinformation in social media, in the media, and we're seeing so much hatred out there. We're also seeing so much love. And we recently did a prayer for meditation, and Wahe Guru, you have been an ally, and it was such a beautiful event to pray for Armenia, to pray for Artsakh. And I feel like that night, my heart just filled up with so much hope. And I was speaking with a lot of women at the event. Ani Lalazarian here, she helped organize the event, and I've been speaking with a lot of women there, and a lot of them are like, how much longer? Armenians have constantly been being displaced and moved, and we're seeing that happen again right now in Artsakh. They're being forced to move out of their homes because they are being attacked. So that's my intro. Welcome to the podcast, and I want us to talk about this generational trauma. How real is that? And how do we fill up the cup and release these feelings of diaspora guilt, of survivor's guilt, of feeling like we're not doing enough? Where do we begin? Wahe Guru and Ani, I'd like you guys to introduce yourselves. I have done a podcast with Wahe Guru Kaur before, and I know you two have been evolving a lot during COVID, so how would you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm what is called an activator, and I lead ceremonies and healing sessions. I teach yoga, I teach meditation, and what has evolved for me during COVID is that my inner activist has awakened. And it's been a very imperfect journey. I've gone through a lot of anger, rage, frustration, guilt about, that I never really took a stand before, because I was in this position in a spiritual community, and I always had this projection that I had to be of love and light, and really never, never say anything negative. And so, through a process of really a big breakdown in the community and the healing that's happened after that, I've realized that it's not one or the other. It's, there's a time to be activated and be an activist and take a stand for something that you believe in, that you know is right. And there's also a time to project healing and peace in a more neutral way, and to hold space for other people who are going through a lot of pain. And so I've had the great privilege to work with many people in the Armenian community, and some of my favorite clients are of Armenian heritage. And so it has become, a real passion of mine to support people in that community, and I've noticed similar threads of experience and trauma, and definitely, I'm generalizing here because I'm not going to say anything specific about my healing work, but with my clients. But what I have seen is that there is this very common generational trauma that shows up in the Armenian community, and it shows up in terms of it's a vibration. It's almost like a smell, or a scent. It's just something that you can pick up on an energetic level, and it's not bad or good. It's not right or wrong. It's just a feeling of very deep wounding, fear, panic, extreme grief, like, the worst of it, the very, very worst of human emotions. And I've also worked with Jewish people over my time as a healer, and I find that there's a parallel, there's similar dynamic with, because both cultures have experienced a genocide.
Yeah, ancestral traumas.
Yeah. And so I was, I think about this a lot, and so there is in our DNA and in our bloodline, because that's passed down when we're, through families. It's also passed down through the stories that we tell, and the stories that our parents tell and our grandparents tell. And those stories turn into patterns in the brain. Just so it's in our blood, it's in our DNA, it's in our makeup, but it's also in the neural pathways in our brain. And these become really deep-seated grooves in our brain that tell us we are not safe, our voices are not heard, we have to fight to survive, we need to provide for our family, so we need to, make good money, set up social standing, and this is across the board in any culture, any background, but I think in the Armenian culture, it's intensified.
And we say, we say that our wounds are still open for a reason, because the genocide of 1915 does remain unrecognized by international leaders.
Yes.
And it's always been a story for me, but I feel like right now I'm feeling it. I'm feeling that story with what's going on.
It's gotten activated. It's gotten charged within you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I know I was feeling that one day, and I didn't know, I tweeted about it. I said, is generational trauma being reactivated a thing? So then I saw Ani's post on your Instagram, and I first of all, I want you to introduce yourself, and
Thank you.
Congratulations, you just graduated your 200-hour Kundalini yoga.
Yes.
I wanted to mention
I'm
that.
really excited. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.
And thank you for having us. This
Of
is
course.
like, you're such a delight. I love being around you, and I feel so honored to be here. So thank you for doing this. And I definitely think that it is something that we need to talk about. And yes, DNA activation is a thing. The week that it happened, in my experience, what I was feeling, besides the high anxiety, which all of us have been feeling, but I felt something activate in my womb. And as I was doing dishes or like laundry, I'm home with the kids and I'm just kind of like doing my thing, but I feel anxiety at the same time. I could literally hear women and children screaming as if they were right next to me. And it was like they were screaming because the women were being separated from their children. They're witnessing people dying, and I could feel it on such a cellular level. And I knew right then, I'm like, I need to call Wahe Guru. Like, I've got some work to do. Like, there's some crazy stuff happening. And as much as I feel like I do my own meditations and my own healing on myself, I'm like, I needed the support because it was bigger than me, and I just needed someone to be there for me while I was going through it. And she was so amazing with that, because during our session, I'm not going to go too deep into it, but I did see a lot, because my grandmother is a genocide survivor. She was 4 years old, and she was taken from her family, and her family was all murdered. She was the only survivor, and I could see the scene that she was in and the fear that she had. And I was experiencing that fear, and luckily Wahe Guru was there to kind of take me out of that, because it's good in a way to process it, but you kind of like at a certain point need to come back into your body, so she did that for me, which was great. But I at least saw like, wow, like this is crazy, and it's actually happening again today. In a million years, I never imagined something like this happening again. We, every year growing up, we're very much Armenian, and our parents have raised us to like know our culture, and we would go every April 24 and do our protests, and we're like, never again, history can't repeat. But we're like, history's never going to repeat. Like, come on, there's no way history is going to repeat. How is that possible? And sure enough, 2020, I'm just flabbergasted. I can't even believe in this day and age something like this could possibly happen again. And what's disturbing is that it was so strategically planned, and they knew they had to do it at a time that no other country in the world could help us. And what better time than COVID-19? I was going to say COVID-20. Than COVID-19, where everyone's in chaos. There's political chaos in the U.S. There's chaos in all these other countries. Who's going to want to help?
The world is distracted.
Who's going to want to help us, So us Armenians, like, I'm just getting the goosebumps talking about it. We've come together so beautifully. I am so proud of, and even non-Armenians, like there's non-Armenians going to these protests.
Oh, sure. Yes.
150,000 people in Los Angeles. Not one fight was broken. Not one punch. Not one fight. Not one fire. Not
Very
one
peaceful.
Broken window. Nothing. And it was just so beautiful to see. I drove through it. I was there, and I saw so much love. And that's when I realized that as small of a country as we are, this loving energy that's being sent to this region is more powerful than any powerful dictator in the world. I believe that love can win and light can win. I'm just praying that happens. But thank you again for having us. I just went on a rant right
story,
now.
No, that was
Gave
awesome.
me-
I feel your passion.
That story
so
just
much.
gave me goosebumps. Like, she's feeling what
Yes.
her grandmother felt at the age of 4.
Mm-hmm.
And when I sit quiet with myself, I'm having visions of stories that my grandma has told me. She's named after a relative that died during the genocide. Bonnie mentioned like the love and the possibility of spreading love, and I feel like when we did the prayer and meditation for Artsakh and Armenia, I felt that in my heart. I mean, on a spiritual level, how can we put that out there, especially when so much of the community is just bombarded by, following up with what's going on the news. We can't just stick our heads in the sand and pretend we don't see what's going on in the world. It isn't just what's going on in Armenia. There's so much social injustice right now, and I think I had this conversation with you during meditation. I said, I feel like the world is opening up its wounds more. That's the vision I'm having, is like breaking those wounds to seal it back up. But
And before they are sealed back up, they have to be
shaking
cleaned
up.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah, when a wound is festering and it keeps repeating this, these horrors in the world, it has to be cleaned out. And the only way to heal the trauma and the past is by
Addressing
it being heard. So people have to listen, have to acknowledge, and then there has to be reparation made. There has to be an action that comes out of it. Because what leaves it really unsettling for everyone is that, people get all riled up about a social issue or, these things happening in Armenia. And then after a period of time, then the next thing comes along that's even bigger, and then that gets forgotten. But it doesn't stop. The horrors are still happening, even if it's not on the front page. So what I have done personally is to, I've made a commitment to regularly getting present to the issues that I am passionate about, and then regularly saying something, posting on social media, doing writing. I want to get more into, posting videos, but so it's coming out, because I think as when we're healing, we have to have a safe space to let it out. So at that spiritual activism event that we did for Armenia and Artsakh, we had a clearing process. It wasn't just a peaceful meditation. We did some clearing and some releasing. And that is one thing, when people have survived horrors like the genocide or like what's happening right now in Armenia, is that the first thing that happens to survive is you get quiet. Because it's just a survival technique. Animals do it. They get quiet. They go hide, And it's not a natural thing to just be big and be loud and take a stand. That, it's a few, very small percentage of people are able to muster that kind of courage. And so there has to be a collective voice that comes forward and speaks and shares and, doesn't stop until it's all out and the wound has been cleansed. And then it can be healed, and then when the reparations have been made, then we can move forward with these projections of love and peace and healing energy and light. But if you just put love and light on top of a bunch of crap, that's, a bloody wound that's not healed, it's not doing anything. So that's why I feel spiritual activism is, it's a new way to think about it, because we do meditation to get ourselves centered. We do healing work to get ourselves centered. Well, what happens when we get centered? We're connected to everything else in the universe. So we get centered, we project that. We send it out in waves. You know, you can feel it right now. It's happening in this room. It's happening outside of this room. We are taking a stand for something, and we're creating this little vortex of energy right now. And so, really, we do these events for ourselves so that we can get to the place where we are strong, where we can be courageous to have a voice and to speak the truth and say, hey, no more. These people are suffering. These people are dying, you know, and it happened before, and hey, wake up, everybody. So we do these events, and we say it's for Armenia and Artsakh, and it is, but simultaneously it's to empower and activate the leaders here in this moment to be strong and be courageous and say something and do something, and whether it's giving money, whether it's volunteering, whether it's making your voice heard and on social media, everyone has their own ways of taking action.
I feel like if there's anything that this year has taught us, is what the spiritual community has known all along, is that we are all connected.
Yes.
Like,
oh, for sure. You can really
COVID-19 spread like wildfire all over the world. And energetically, like, we are all connected. I want you to comment, Ani, a little bit about putting good energy out there rather than that energy of fear. Because when COVID-19 first broke out, I feel like a lot of people were putting that energy of fear out there, and you heard a lot of the spiritual community say, don't be consumed by that fear. And now with what's going on in Armenia, like, we're feeling this in our DNA. We're feeling this in our soul. There is, I'm speaking with girlfriends who are talking about that survivor's guilt. I spoke with people at our healing event that were like, Armenians keep getting displaced generation after generation. When is this going to stop? There is that fear. So how do we fill up the cup?
Yes.
And talk about that experience for you.
So it's hard not to be fearful in these situations, right? Because you're like, people are dying, they're going to wipe out our nation, they're taking over, what's going to happen, even with COVID-19 or whatever the topic might be, but specifically about Armenia and Artsakh, it's hard not to be fearful. But fear, like Wahe Guru mentioned, everything is an energy. So fear is an energy of its own. And the more fear we have, we're feeding into the fear, It goes the same with any energy. It could be with anger. If someone's angry and you're more angry, and then the anger it snowballs, you're feeding into that anger. So when someone, let's say you're in a relationship, I'm going to just take it back to just a scenario. You're fighting with your spouse or your boyfriend, girlfriend, and then and if, let's say, the other one turns and says, oh, but I love you, and they start laughing, they could just shift the entire energy, and that anger can dissipate. So I feel like that's one way of filling up the cup for fear, as difficult as it is, but that's the space that we need to hold as the diaspora, because I know in Armenia and Artsakh, it'll be more difficult for them because they're actually physically experiencing it. So for them, it's a complete different, situation. For us over here, we need to learn how to hold that space for our brothers and sisters, and fill up the space with love instead of fear, because, the fear might also be there, like coming back as some kind of and you can chime in on that, protection, not a protection, like to serve something that was there from the past, because I know that's some work that we've done also that's coming up from the past. But that is one way to fill up the cup with love and light, is try as much as we can to melt away that fear, knowing that we're feeding into it more if we have it. So I hope that answered your question. If there's any other way that you think, what would be a good way to fill up the cup?
Well, especially with this, like the feeling of survivor's guilt, the feeling of I'm not doing enough, the feeling of what more can I do? I'm donating, I'm using my business to donate.
You need to know that you are doing it all. Like, I get it. I'm there. I was there, and I realized I'm doing everything that I could do. As long as we know that we're doing everything that we can and that we want to, you're not doing it forcefully. It's coming from your heart. that's all that we can do, you know, and it's really important to have self-care during these times with your meditations, whether it's yoga, go outside in nature. It is so important to do that because you do need your sanity. I remember flipping through my Instagram, having so much anxiety looking at all the posts because this is all that we're posting. And I was getting migraines and I was feeling sick. I'm like, I think I'm going to just throw up. Like, I was like wanting
physically
to purge
ill.
physically. Like, I wasn't sick, but it felt like I needed to purge everything out. That's not good for us either. So we need to have a balance and be able to go out in nature and connect with ourselves and divine, and then come back and then do our part as a humanitarian, you know, in however way that we can. And everyone doing a small part is a big deal because collectively it ends up being a big, you know, thing, and we're doing it. We're all doing it. You're doing a great job too, Natalie. You are.
The self-care has been tough though, and it's like I've based this entire podcast on self-love and self-care, and I feel like I've just had to go into a cocoon. Like, I can't release anything. I can't really do anything right now. But I needed to go into that cocoon to come up with this episode and to figure out how I can use my voice to help others. And I think, Wahe Guru, you were going to comment on that whole, like, the guilt of that self-care. Like, how do we show ourselves self-love? And how is it okay when so many people are consumed by everything going on in politics, everything going on in the world? There's the fear of the elections coming up soon. And if you can talk a little bit on that.
It is very complex, and I love what Ani said so much, and I really resonate with that. Self-care and self-love can express itself in multifaceted different ways, all right? So if we are interconnected, if we are accepting that there is one force of love, and we're in this field of awareness that is love, then self-care is making a phone call, is making a donation. Self-care is posting something on social media, because our brothers and sisters in Armenia and Artsakh, that's us. That's just another reflection of me, of you. And so there has to be a balance between the activism and then the just daily drinking in the nectar of the moment, and that does come through our spiritual practice. Maybe it's walking meditation, maybe it's breath work, cold showers, hydrotherapy, maybe it's eating very fresh organic food. We have so many different choices. And what it really comes down to is that you have to decide, this is the way that I'm going to be an activist, and this is the way I'm going to take care of myself. Like, for me personally, during COVID, our whole family, we became vegans, and because climate change and the environment is really important to us. And then doing that one thing, which was a very big thing for a family of 4, and doing that one thing has created ripple effects in our lives. So now, after almost 10 months or a year of doing that, now we're going towards where we want to be zero waste. So it's like, once you start, and I mean, believe me, we're far from being zero waste.
That's hard.
As we are far from doing it. But that's how our consciousness got activated. We started with the veganism, and then we realized, oh my gosh, but if we have all this packaging, and if we have all this, I mean, and so you can't take in everything at once. And you can't change everything at once either, within yourself or within the world. Otherwise, I mean, that's why people are committing suicide and going crazy and and on medication, or that's why alcohol sales have gone up 500% in the past. Yeah, I read a Times article about that.
500%?
Online, alcohol sales have gone up 500%. Consumption has gone up 50%.
Well, because people want to numb.
They're home and they're like, all right, we're bored, we might.
Yeah. No, I think it's just checking out.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, I've had moments of I'm just gonna Netflix until I fall asleep, and I've had to be very conscious about that. Even like I need to sit with my feelings. I need to feel this. But the cocoon phase, I don't want to think about it.
It just gets so overwhelming.
Yeah.
And so what I finally have found for myself, because I went through that whole overwhelming, sleeping a lot, you know, drinking more wine, and finally I've just said, no, I can't do that if I'm going to be an effective member of society, a citizen, a spiritual being. And so I have to take care of myself, because it's like, you know, we have to think of that we're in the war too.
Oh yeah,
we're in the war as well. Like we have to treat our bodies like we're preparing for this fight, and we have to treat other people, and we have to be that strong and that intense. And maybe we're not carrying guns, but maybe our weapon is the voice, or
social media,
how we show up, what we say to our friends and neighbors, how we treat people, you know.
I'm smiling because that manifested in my life. I hadn't done healing breath all through quarantine, and when I did it with the both of you, I had this energy of hope and peace in my heart, and I was putting that out in my family, and my brother actually came up to me and said, thank you for keeping it together. Aww. We've needed this. And and I actually saw that ripple effect in my immediate family, just That's around me.
It's, you know, interesting that you say that, because especially doing the whole like Kundalini, you know, thing and being into this practice, I do realize that, like, let's say you're in a dark space, right, and one person, and that's you and your family, is holding the light, and the room is dark and nobody could see. You're lighting up the path for everyone, your entire family, and they see that. So that's what's happening, is you're the light holder, and they're kind of benefiting that light through you. So that's amazing. I know.
It's not easy to be the light holder, but I feel that's all our purpose here.
And it's also, I want to also acknowledge that the going into the cocoon, or the feeling of, you know, not doing something, that's actually a part of the process.
Yeah.
How a butterfly doesn't just pop into being a butterfly. A butterfly goes through stages. You know, we're saying cocoon, like, you have to go through those stages. At one point, it's a liquefied, you know, jelly in there. And, you know, so that's what we have to go through as well. And it's very intense and really scary to have everybody going through it. In their own way. You know, doesn't matter what background you're from, or, you know, where your family's from. We're all going through it.
Both individually and globally.
And collectively.
Yes. Ani, I want you to talk a little bit about what your family's been doing in Armenia.
Aww. It's incredible, actually, how things just kind of unfold when you're not sure. You know, when you're doing something in your life and you're like, why is this happening? And then years down the line, you're like, oh, now I see why that was happening a few years ago. So my father, he manufactures lunch trucks in Los Angeles, and he's from Armenia. You know, his mother was the one that survived the genocide, so he is very much emotionally tied to the country and always tries to help however he can. So a few years back, he had some trucks that he assembled in Armenia and created a manufacturing company out there, and wasn't sure what was going to happen. There's a whole story behind it that I'm not going to get into, but basically some things that didn't work out for him, so he decided to open up the factory in Armenia, but was kind of like, okay, well, where's this gonna go? He built it, we kind of didn't have direction yet. Like, it was almost like, why is this happening? But it's happening. And then when it's so beautiful how things just come together, like God's plan, you know. When this happened, and when he woke up in the morning and saw the news of what happened, and it hit him so deeply and hard, he immediately called Armenia and said, we're converting them into hospital clinics. Like right now. He had 40 trucks in Armenia. They were already built, but they were food trucks. So he was going to do food trucks for Armenia and, you know, just do that for them over there. But then once this happened, he's like, no, we need the hospitals. And he's putting the equipments in there as we speak. And they're starting to go to Artsakh. Which is That's amazing. Beautiful. I know. When I saw it, like when he sent me the pictures and the videos, I got the goosebumps. I was crying. I'm like, Dad, this is amazing. I know how much, you know, he's 80 years old. He's going to be 80 in December. He's such a hard worker. I know what he was going through trying to get the trucks to Armenia in bins, like unassembled. Wow. He was like, he had a headache, like he got it there, he had to do it. Like when he put his mind to it, he had to do it. And then now that it's coming to a good use and he's able to donate these trucks and do this, is like, it's almost like God was like guiding him to do this, you know? And we just like didn't know why it was happening. And then it was like there, bam, like as soon as it happened, it's so amazing to watch in a way. But yeah, so that's what's beautiful. Going. And he was actually on Good Morning LA this morning. Okay. Yeah, I know. It's really awesome. So thank you for asking me that question, because I am really proud of him and his hard work.
And I think you have some photos of that up on
I do.
Instagram.
I have a video and photos, and I'm going to post the Good Morning LA video today too after.
Awesome. A question I like to ask all my guests is, how do you practice self-love and self-love, self-care, especially in a time like this? So Wahe Guru, what tips, advice do you have for practicing self-love and self-care?
Yeah, I don't think I have any advice. I'm just a human being, and I do my practice imperfectly. But I do it with as much compassion as I can. So I do a daily meditation called the Japji, which I've done every day for over 20 years. And that is just a habit now. So that's part of my life that I really love. It helps to clear my head and to just connect me to my soul. But sometimes I do it just drinking my coffee, or the kids are, jumping around me or whatever. I had to, with having 3 boys, I had to just let go of any, need for it to be a certain way, my spiritual practice. So I also hike almost every day, and we made a choice as our family to live in nature full time. And so that's really part of my self-care is we live in a cabin. We live in a cabin in the woods, and we're just surrounded by nature all the time. And that's probably my main self-care, is connecting with the animals, the plants, the trees, because there's this dynamic exchange that happens in nature, and it's so pure, it's so filled with love, and there's no other stories, there's no other agenda, that's happening, and animals are pure love, so I feel like I learn a lot from being in that natural environment. And then I also practice yoga. I don't do it every day, but I do it regularly. And chanting, meditation, read a lot of spiritual texts. And I have found that I do things rather than like very disciplined every day. I do things seasonally. So I'll have seasonal practices or traditions that I find I do. And so like we're getting into fall, and I'm going to start making my soups and my juices. And so when I do my soups, I chant or I pray, and I infuse it with a lot of energy, with a mantra, with an affirmation, and I get the kids to come and do it too, and we like infuse that soup, talk to it, and we laugh, and so then when we're ingesting the food, then we're taking that vibration into our bodies. And so that's one example of a seasonal thing that we do, that is our self-care, but it's also just, we're just eating too.
Yeah.
You know? And
it's the lifestyle you've created.
It's a lifestyle. It's kind of an immersive self-care, like where everything becomes about the practice and being part of our community, nature, our world, and so eventually, you know, hopefully we can start to break down that separation. That and I feel like the separation is what has kept me from being healthy, and the separation has kept me from, you know, feeling happy. So when I connect, or when I, you know, take an action that is positive, life affirming, then that love floods back into my life. So
and you fill
yeah,
up
those
the
are
cup.
some things, but yeah, very imperfectly, very day to day, except for my morning prayer. I do that every day.
I love that. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Ani, what do you do, or anything new you learned through your
well, I'm a mom of
training?
3-year-old twins. So, you know, I have my challenges with self-love stuff. One way for me was actually taking the Kundalini teacher training program. So that was kind of like my little getaway, like a retreat, because it was one weekend every month. And it just allowed me to really give that time for myself. And now that it's done with, it's something like Wahe Guru talks about. Every now and then throughout my day, I try to either do a little bit of meditation here, a little bit of yoga here, you know. Usually the practice is about 2 hours in the morning, which I can't really do. So I kind of divide that up within my day. Even taking a few breaths here and there, you know, when I'm with the kids is so helpful. Just one important thing that I've noticed is paying attention to our breaths, because I remember before even getting into the healing breath work that we did, I used to tell myself, like, I don't think I'm breathing. Like, there are times where I'm holding my breath and I'm like, why am I holding my breath? And that's something that we all do without realizing, especially when we're stressed and there's so much going on. So just kind of focusing on your breath and counting while you're breathing, just easy things, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4 in, 1, 2, 3, 4 out. Just being aware of your breath is one simple way that you can really fill your cup up, you know, and that's something that I do. Meditation, mantra, and breathing, and a little bit of yoga, and I think you're set. But everyone has their thing. So I've talked to some people where yoga is not their thing. Maybe they like, you know, Tai Chi or like Qigong or something else, you know, that energetically they could help themselves balance with. You kind of need to experiment to find what it is that you align with. So
beautiful. Or walking meditation.
Walking meditation is
if
awesome.
If you can't stay still. And
So
yeah. Or like some people tell me, I can't meditate. Meditation's not for me. Meditation's not for me. And most of these people aren't in my family. I'm like, no, we all can do it, you know? Like, it's just, it's so loud that you're like, nope, I can't shut it down. But when you do shut it down, you're like, oh, this is really nice.
Wahe Guru Kaur, Ani Lalazarian, can you tell people where to find you on social media? And I know you are still teaching yoga classes. How can people find your classes online?
Oh, sure.
If you'd like to share that information.
My Instagram is at wahegurukar_, and you can find me on Facebook or Instagram, Twitter, and I'm working on my website, so that'll come out. I teach on Sundays right now at 9:30 a.m., and that's a class for all levels, ages, and abilities, and anyone's welcome. It's by donation. And I post my Zoom link on Instagram and Facebook every week.
Perfect.
So more classes coming soon, but and then we have our next spiritual activation event, and that's going to be November 1st, and the time is TBD, but it's going to be in the afternoon on November 1st, and the event is called Vote for Love. So it's beyond politics, beyond party, and beyond debate. We are here to hold space for love, unity as a nation, getting back on track with the most important things that are on everyone's minds and everyone's agendas, which is safety, security for family, for our friends, health, and wellness, and financial prosperity. So that's going to be coming up, and I'm going to be working with George Perez on that event.
Nice, and you'll have all the info on how people can join.
Definitely.
On your Instagram and social media pages. Ani, how can people find you?
So I have a very new page. It's called Radiant Soul Mama. Soul is SOL, and they can come there and see my posts and just kind of see the journey that I'm on and the direction that we're going with. And it's kind of finding your soul's purpose. A lot of people want to kind of know what they're doing with their lives and are stuck in this place where it's all about work and the day-to-day things, and they feel like they want more in their life, and it's just not about that, so that's kind of what I talk about. And also I go over a lot of the basic stuff, like what energy is and how water is healing and how air is healing, and just the basics of spirituality and what the third eye is, or how to raise your vibration, things like that. I'm trying to kind of introduce a new world to people that are interested in and don't really know much, and could be confusing for them because they don't really understand a lot of the language that goes with it. So I try to talk about that more.
Beautiful. So Radiant Soul Mama, and I'll have all those links on our show notes. Thank you, ladies, for doing this today. I really appreciate it. It was so wonderful, and thank you everyone for listening to Hey Heart 143. If you feel like this can help a friend, pass the episode along to a friend, send the link over, and go ahead and rate and review it on iTunes. That's how more and more people find this. One more thing I wanted to mention, if you are in the LA area, I will have a link to all the restaurants, businesses donating to Armenia Fund. So I have a spreadsheet of that, and I'll have that link on our show notes as well. So
thank you so much, Natalie, for having us. We love you. You are love.
I love you. You have such a great vision here.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Remember, 143 means I love you. Tell your own heart I love you. Have a blessed day.